I said, Kobe, you're the best player in the world. Why were you doing such basic drills this morning? And he smiled and he winked and he said, well, why do you think I'm the best player in the world? It's because I never get bored with the basics. I identify the 4 or 5 key fundamentals that will allow me to be excellent in that area, and I work relentlessly towards mastery of them. Now, with that, I can say with a huge smile, I'm not coming from a place of mastery on any of that stuff. But what I can say with an equally huge smile is I'm making progress and I'm moving in the right direction. And I can sit here with you right now and tell you I am a better man in every area of my life than I was the last time I saw you a couple years ago on your show.
For more than 15 years, Alan Stein Jr. worked with the highest performing basketball players on the planet, including iconic superstars such as Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, and Kobe Bryant. Since then, Alan has spoken on stages around the world for global brands such as American Express, Microsoft, Pepsi, Toyota, and Starbucks. He's here today to help you simplify success, close the gap between where you are and where you want to be, and develop a next play mindset.
Why'd you write this book, like Next Play, of all the things of you could go through, mental techniques, mindset, strategy, success principles, why Next Play?
It's the mantra that's had the biggest effect on my life. And it's done it from a very holistic approach. I mean, it's affected me as a father and as a parent. It's affected me as a business owner, as a speaker, as someone who still identifies as an athlete and still tries to hoop. Like Next Play just has so much utility. And when I first heard of it, because in full transparency, Coach K, the legendary basketball coach from Duke, was the one that came up with the concept.
Okay.
And I read about it in his book in the early 2000s, but I didn't have the emotional maturity to actually implement it. Consciously, it made sense, and I thought, yeah, this would be very helpful. But I allowed myself to be emotionally hijacked all of the time, and I allowed myself to get frustrated and disappointed by things that had happened in the past, and it took me away from being present. It wasn't until 10 years later, when I was working at DeMatha Catholic High School with the basketball program there, that I saw it put into practice with the head coach, Mike Jones, and that's when I started to implement it, and everything in my life changed afterwards. And I now look at Next Play through a few different lenses. The ones we're most familiar with is in the micro, is in the moment. You know, it's next pitch, next play, next sale, next conversation. It's when something doesn't go your way in the micro, can you quickly refocus the lens on what's happening now, which is the ultimate premise. Don't focus on what just happened, focus on what's happening now. But as I get closer to age 50, I'll be turning 50 in a couple of months, I also zoom out and I use Next Play in the macro and go, all right, what's going to be the next play of my life when my 3 children leave the house and I'm an empty nester? What's going to be the next play of my life when, unfortunately, my aging parents who aren't in great health, they're not going to be around very much longer. And, you know, I've identified as being the son of 2 parents for 50 years, but that's going to shift and change at some point. And what's the next play that I'm going to step into? And, you know, I'm divorced, so I had to find a next play after marriage. So there's these big macro transitions that we all experience in life that I want folks to be very proactive in figuring out what's their next play going to be instead of reactive when it happens.
What is something strategically that you have in the book that helps someone transition to the next play? What do you do?
Well, we call it a whiteboard memory. It's as if whatever was written on the whiteboard, we just erase it immediately. You know, great shooters like Kobe, for example, they don't allow the negative energy from the first 8 misses to affect the 9th shot. They shoot the 9th shot as if they had made the first 8. And you can only do that if you have a very short-term memory, which is incredibly important. The other thing is we can't let our feelings and our emotions dictate our behaviors and actions. If we do that, we become inconsistent by definition. We're human beings, and we're going to experience every single emotion under the sun. And I'm of the belief there are no bad emotions. Every emotion serves a purpose for us. But we have to be very careful in letting our emotions drive the car and letting them dictate how we behave. You know, if I'm only kind and thoughtful and generous when I'm in a good mood, well, that means probably half of my life I'm going to be the exact opposite of those things. So I want to make sure that I'm not allowing my emotions or how I feel in the moment to dictate my behavior and actions. And it's the same thing. I would want a player to be disappointed that they missed their first 8 shots. I mean, let's not forget the name of the game is put the ball in the basket. And as much work as they've put in, it's okay if they're disappointed that they missed those 8 shots. But they can't let that disappointment dictate their behavior. They can't let it dictate their actions. They can't let it dictate how they shoot that 9th shot. So the ability to separate how we feel from the standard of how we perform and the standard of how we show up, to me, that's a crucial component of next play.
Most people's confidence or their identity is very fragile. It's predicated on results all the time.
Yes, and
right?
that's what. And you're so insightful, and that's where the pitfall is. We cannot attach our self-worth and our self-belief to the outcomes, because by definition, we don't control outcomes. Now, you know me, I'm a process-oriented guy.
Yeah.
I would much rather my identity be tied to the process, to my effort, to my attitude, to the things that I have control over, as opposed to outcomes, because we don't control those. You don't control the sale. What you do control is, did you put yourself or your product and service in the best position to be of service to someone else? Did you qualify the right prospect, and you're asking the right questions of the right people? If you do that, you will tend to get more sales than not, but you still don't have ultimate control over it. And once again, I'm all about consistency. If I'm only confident and have self-belief when I'm getting the outcomes I want, then when I don't, then the confidence goes down. And I want confidence to be a controllable factor. And I'm a believer that confidence comes from a few different areas. The one that I've learned from you is it comes from keeping the promises we make to ourselves. You know, if you tell yourself you're going to get up at 6 a.m. and go for a jog, if you wake up and do that, your confidence starts to build. If you hit the snooze and you pull the covers over your head, your confidence starts to erode. Confidence also comes from demonstrated performance. You know, the reason Kobe was such a confidence player is because he put in more work during the unseen hours than arguably anybody else on the planet. He's seen the ball go through the basket when no one else is watching, which that demonstrated performance then carries over when the lights are on. And then the last one is the little voice that we have inside of our head, our self-narrative and our self-talk. And if anyone watching or listening right now says, I don't have a little voice in my head, well, who do you think just said that to you? It's the little voice in your head. So we all have it. And do you talk to yourself in an empowering, a constructive way, you know, with compassion, or do you talk to yourself in a very critical and judgmental way? And how we talk to ourselves dictates how we feel about ourselves. So if we can do those three things, and those are all controllable, we can build confidence.
Tell them the Kobe story. Do you remember the story you told me about getting to you know this story?
Do I remember it? Yeah. I almost every single keynote that I've given in the last 10 years, I start with the Kobe story because it was such a fundamental experience for me and how it shifted my perspective. And what I'll do is I'll give you the abbreviated version of the Kobe story, and then I'll tell you the part two, which I know we talked about last time, but it's one that I rarely tell, but it really glues everything together. So
awesome,
in 2007, Nike hired me to work the Kobe Bryant Skills Academy. Nike was starting a series of events where they wanted their flagship athletes to be able to have an impact on the top high school and college players. And I got a chance to watch one of Kobe's really early morning workouts. I mean, he was in the gym at 3:30 in the morning. I mean, keep in mind, for most NBA players in the offseason, 3:30 in the morning is when you're coming home from something, from the club or from the bar. Right. And that's when he's starting his day. But the most impressive was not just the wake up time and the start time, but it was his relentless obsession and commitment to the fundamentals. Like, he was working on moves that, I kid you not, I had taught to middle school age players. Now, he was doing it with an unparalleled level of intensity and just an incredible level of detail and precision and focus. But it wasn't the stuff that he was doing that was remarkable. It was the way that he was doing it. And he always knew that working on mastery of the fundamentals was the foundation to which everything else was built. And when I asked him about it later at camp, that's when he said something that, I kid you not, still puts the hairs on my neck, makes them stand up, and it changed my life forever. I said, Kobe, you're the best player in the world. Why were you doing such basic drills this morning? And he smiled and he winked and he said, well, why do you think I'm the best player in the world? It's because I never get bored with the basics. And that line of I never get bored with the basics changed everything for me. As a young coach, honestly, I had the arrogance to think that there were things that were beneath me, things that I didn't need to do. And then here I meet someone who's world-class at his craft. And if he can tell me that the reason he's world-class is because of his attention to the basics, then who am I to ever skip them? So for me right now, in every area of my life that I aim for excellence, whether it's being a father, being a speaker, being a friend, being a business owner, I identify the 4 or 5 key fundamentals that will allow me to be excellent in that area, and I work relentlessly towards mastery of them. Now, with that, I can say with a huge smile, I'm not coming from a place of mastery on any of that stuff. But what I can say with an equally huge smile is I'm making progress and I'm moving in the right direction. And I can sit here with you right now and tell you I am a better man in every area of my life than I was the last time I saw you a couple years ago on your show. So I'm going in the right direction. I'm not there yet. And truthfully, I never will be, but I'm moving in the right direction. But the second half of that Kobe story, which I rarely tell, is the reason Kobe decided to get up so early in the morning was he had already identified that his competition in the NBA, if he took the upper 10% of players in the NBA, that they were going to work out twice a day during the offseason. The mediocre players in the NBA are going to work out once. The really dedicated ones work out twice. And Kobe said to himself, well, if I only do what everyone else is doing, how will I create any separation? How will I create, improve above them? So he said, if they're going to work out twice a day, I have to work out 3 times a day. And he said, the only other way I can fit that in is by getting up extra early. So in his mind, he said, when I'm coming home from workout number 1, you're getting to the gym for your workout number 1. I'm always one step ahead of you. But the part that I loved, he said in one off season, that might not create much separation, but you start to stack years. And in his case, played almost 20 years. You create separation that no one can ever catch. And the most important part, though, that I want to make sure your listeners and your viewers understand, I'm not saying that more is always better. In fact, more is rarely better. Better is better. So it's not just that Kobe did more work. It was also his attention to detail and the quality of the work that he put in. An hour for him is not the same as an hour for other players. It's kind of like at work. The average person works, an 8-hour workday. But how much are they actually working? Studies show you're working like 3 hours out of 8 because the other 5 is fluff. Kobe's 60 minutes of dedicated work is 60 minutes of dedicated work. And when you can pack that kind of punch, then, your efficiency and your effectiveness is just unmatched.
I can see the work you've put in, by the way.
Well, thank you.
Your children are here with you today, and I believe you about being a better man than you were the first time I met you. But I can tell you this, your communication, through the roof.
Thank you.
You're at a whole different level. By the way, if you're looking for a great keynote, Alan's unbelievable. But I can see it on you right now. I was wondering, you say in the book about operating systems.
Yeah.
What do you mean when you say that? What upgrade your operating system? What does that mean?
Well, I don't know if you have an iPhone. I have an iPhone, and many people do. And every couple of months there's an upgrade to the operating system, and it usually says we're working out some of the bugs. We're going to make this more efficient, more effective. Like they want your phone to be as helpful of a resource as possible. And I believe as human beings, we all have our operating systems, and mine has radically changed over the years. When I think of the operating system I was using in my 20s compared to now as I'm knocking on the door of 50, it's radically different.
Yeah.
But it's small incremental tweaks. None of this stuff, same thing with your iPhone. It doesn't make these big colossal changes every time there's an upgrade. It just makes some slight changes. And for us as human beings, it's the changes we make to our perspective, to our approach, to our belief system, to what we choose to feed ourselves with. Obviously you are in incredible shape, so I know that you're very careful with what you put in your body as far as nourishment, but as well as anyone, we also have to be very careful with what we feed our brain, what we feed our emotions, the people we choose to associate with and hang out with. Never spend extensive time with someone you don't want to become. Like how basic of a premise is that? But that is a huge one, because when I look at times in my life where I wasn't performing at the level I think I was capable of, I was also hanging around people that were more of an anchor than uplifters. And I have to switch my environment. I'm a huge believer in environment. So we want to create the environment that's going to allow us to be successful. And what environment could be better than trying to spend time with people that, I have so much admiration and respect for you and what you've built. I want to step into the opportunities and things that you've been able to do. So in order to do that, I read, watch, and listen to everything that you put out, because I want to surround myself with what I need to up level. And it's the same thing I try to model for my children and model for everyone, whether I'm talking on stage or writing something on page. That's what's most important.
When you're around major players, a great mom, an unbelievable school teacher, a world-class athlete, incredible business person, great sales, there's a level of intensity about these people that when you're around them, you flippin' feel it.
Well, I love it. I think you're right on point. And the way I would define it, it's the ability to focus, and it's the ability to be in the present moment. Ultimately, that's what defines intensity. We'll all express it in different ways. I consider myself incredibly intense, but I also I don't think I come across as like the typical alpha male, like trying to dominate situations and dominate conversations. That's not my style.
Agreed.
But what I can do is I have the ability to focus, which by definition means block out all of the distractions and block out everything that is unnecessary or unessential and focus on what matters most, which is the premise of the book, is focus. Learning, first of all, you have to identify what matters most, and then you have to be able to focus on it. But all of this comes back to the ability to focus on the present moment, to know what you have control over and let go of the things that you don't. And to me, that's the level of intensity. You know, that's a reason why a Kobe or a Steph Curry have that intensity, is they can block out everything that's going on in the world and focus on the task at hand, what's right in front of them. And they also have the masterful ability to literally just focus on the step that's right in front of them.
Yeah.
This possession. They're not worried about winning the game, not at that moment. They're worried about just winning this possession, whether it's on offense or defense, and being able to micro that down is incredibly important. And yes, from a speaking standpoint, I study that craft relentlessly.
I know you do.
I want to be the best speaker that I'm capable of, because I believe it's an opportunity for me to share a message that I'm passionate about. And certainly I study other speakers like yourself. And here's a helpful tip for someone that wants to become a better speaker, a better communicator. I'll take a clip of you and watching you speak, and I'll watch it in 3 different ways. One, I'll watch it with absolutely no audio. I just watch you. Now, I see your mouth moving, but I don't know what you're saying. But I watch your mannerisms. I watch your physicality. I can see the intensity on your face. Second, I'll only listen to the audio. So I won't watch anything that you're doing and only hear your tonality, your ability to pause, because we know there's a power in the pause, your inflection, your volume, and I'm going to hear how you're manipulating your instrument, which is your voice. And then the third time I'll watch it, I'm going to watch the whole package together, and I'm going to watch the entire thing. And I'm going to look at you from a delivery standpoint, from a content standpoint. Now, when I'm doing that, my goal is to not be you.
Yep.
There's only one you, and you're doing it better than anybody else.
I don't know about that.
But my goal is to be able to say, what are some things that Ed is a master of on stage that if I work hard enough and I add to my speaking game, I can start to emulate and make a part of what I do. And then I also make sure that I study things outside of keynote speakers. I made a kind of a joke earlier, but I'm really serious. I study hip hop and I study stand-up comedy.
So do I.
Because those are 2 forms of spoken word that, first of all, I enjoy. So
Yep.
I actually like both of those art forms. But there's so much that you can learn from hip hop artists and from stand-up comedians on how to tell story, on how to sway emotion. So I try and study those, not because I want to be either, and don't worry, I couldn't be either, but I can take things from those. So I take that holistic approach, and then I constantly iterate. You know, I tell many of the same stories, and I have been telling them for years, but my overall program has really grown, and it iterates, and I'm not afraid to try new stuff. Here's another one that I think you'll appreciate, and I learned this from a good friend of mine who's a brilliant speaker. He does what's called the new 2. In every single talk he gives, he does 2 minutes of brand new material that he has never shared publicly. He's never done in front of anyone. But he's not afraid to try it. And he tests it out. And if it goes really well, that new 2 might turn into a new 7. If it doesn't go well, he asks himself 2 questions. Can I try and tweak it and iterate it and try it again? Or sometimes, you know, in baseball, sometimes we just swing and we miss. And that's okay. But either one. So for a guy like that who gives 80 keynotes a year, that's 160 minutes of brand new material that he gets to try in front of a live audience. And I've tried to work that in. So every single talk I give, I integrate something new in. And it's amazing how quickly you can iterate and grow when you're willing to just inch by inch kind of step into that next play.
What if someone right now, they're listening, I'm going to give you just a hard question. Someone right now is like, I need the next play. I just had my business fail. I just got replaced by AI. My relationship just ended. I mean, I'm on the turf, man. I'm knocked down on the canvas right now. What would you describe to them how to get into the next play? What would you say to that person?
Well, the very first thing I'd say is it's okay to not be okay. And whatever you're feeling right now, all that means is that you're human. That's part of the human experience. And when your business fails or your relationship fails or you've taken one on the chin, it's okay to be upset. It's okay to be disappointed. It's okay to be frustrated. It's okay, any of those things. Like we said earlier, I don't believe that there are any negative emotions. I believe every emotion serves a purpose. Now, there are certainly ones that aren't very pleasant, and we'd prefer not to feel them, but we have them for a reason. So the first thing is give yourself the compassion to be okay with not being okay and know that what you're doing is human. Don't resist it. Don't suppress it. Don't ignore it. Embrace those feelings. Then you have to say, well, what is the next step that I can take, the next play that is within my control that can at least inch me in the right direction? Inch me in the direction of feeling a little better or more confident or more optimistic. Inch me in the right direction of maybe picking up the pieces of my business, either repairing that relationship or acknowledging that I'm going to start a new one. But just take the very next step that you can take. Because once again, we want to make sure that we're in control of our actions and our behaviors and our decisions. We're not letting the emotions drive that car. Because the emotions will tell us, I just give up. I don't even want to try. This is awful. This is the worst thing that ever happened to me. And if you're willing to do that, then the cool part about when we look backwards, when we have the gift of hindsight, we can change our relationship with the past. We can't change the facts of the past, but we can change our relationship of the past. But a perfect example, and my 3 kids are sitting here watching this. I don't even know if they've heard me say this before. When I went through my divorce 10 years ago, at the time, I thought it was the worst thing that had ever happened to me. Now looking back, it was one of the best things that's ever happened to me because of the path that it puts me on. And I have a great amicable and civil relationship with their mom. She's a fantastic mom, have a wonderful relationship with my 3 kids. But I didn't see any of that when I was in the middle of it. You know, you can't see the picture when you're in the frame. So sometimes you got to be able to step outside of that. And now when I look back, I can say that that's one of the best things that ever happened. So the other reason I say that is whatever someone is going through right now, this failed business, this failed relationship, at the moment, it's okay if it feels like it's the worst thing that ever happened to you, but you can change that perspective. And one day you're going to look back and say, this was the conduit that sparked greatness. This failed business is what put me on another track to start an even better business. This failed relationship, which didn't work, actually allowed me to attract and meet the person I'm with now, which is the best it's ever been. So just understand that we're all in this for the long game. Now, time is not promised, as you just said. Like, I'm not guaranteed that my flight will even land from Tucson. I certainly hope that it does, but we're not promised any of it. But we just want to make sure that we have that perspective that as long as I am going to be here, like, I am in control of the way that I'm going to approach this.
The average person, well, most people, in fact, maybe I would say this. They'd say, I want to be happier. But in the book, you go, not so fast, to quote Lee Corso. You go, seek what? Not happiness. I know what you say, but I want you to tell them.
I'm also, like you, I study language. And to me, the issue with happiness is an emotion. And all emotions are fleeting. So there's no single person in the world, myself at the front of that line, that is happy 24/7. So happiness ebbs and flows. In fact, I can be happy in one moment, receive a text from someone else, and all of a sudden be immediately unhappy based on what that text said. So I don't really have control over my happiness because contrary to popular belief, we don't control our feelings. We control what we do with them. We control whether or not we listen to them and how we use them, but we don't necessarily control our feelings or our thoughts. To me, I'm much more in pursuit of fulfillment. Because to me, fulfillment is a joy and an enjoyment of who I'm with, what I'm doing, and that is much more within my control. Because there can be times where I can still have a really solid sense of peace and fulfillment even if I'm not happy in the moment. So to me, fulfillment is less of a feeling and it's more of a state. It's more of a how we're experiencing life. And to me, that's more important. You know, a lot of times as parents, people say, well, I just want my kids to be happy. Well, of course, in general, I want my kids to be happy. But you know what I want more than I want my kids to be happy? I want them to be resilient. I want them to have the ability to manage their emotions. I want my kids to be able to take one on the chin and still be able to pick themselves up and move forward with optimism and confidence. So I don't wish for my children to have fewer problems. I try to teach them how to build the strength to overcome whatever problems they're going to have. And to me, that's way more important than them always being happy. So as a father, and they would even tell you this, I don't bend over backwards to try to make sure they're happy 24/7. Like I let my kids, experience sadness, experience disappointment. I want you guys to sit with it. I don't try to, anesthetize them to those types of feelings. I want them to experience life, and I want them to do it at a young age so when they're older, they have the ability to regulate their emotions, which I believe is arguably the most important skill that any of us can develop as humans, and the most important skill we can teach our children is the ability to understand, manage, process, and use your emotions. And if I could give my kids any gift, it would be that. It would not be happiness or rainbows and ice cream all of the time.
I got an F on my test. God forbid, I got caught drinking at school, and my girlfriend broke up with me. I'm talking the trifecta
quite a
of
day.
Stuff. What do we do to help him move to the next play and emotionally regulate?
Well, certainly before I can say or do anything, it would be helpful if I've modeled all of this beforehand.
Amen.
And that's where you're caught, not taught. I say that all the time. I probably owe you royalties on that statement.
That's probably not mine.
Yeah. So I want to make sure that I've modeled for them in the times where those types of things have happened to me, that I've been able to model the emotional regulation skills and the ability to, so I've planted those seeds. And I've always believed it's never too early to plant seeds. I was planting seeds with them before they even knew it. And now at their current age as a father, there's nothing that brings me more joy than seeing a seed that I planted 10 years ago when they didn't even know it come to fruition now with something they say or do. And it's the most fulfilling feeling, as you know, as a father.
That's wonderful.
But the next thing I would say is I'm a big believer in accountability. So in any of those situations, the F, the caught drinking, or the girlfriend broke up, the first question I would ask is, well, what role did you play in that? How were you complicit into those things happening? Because I understand as teenagers.
Talk about counterculture. Beautiful.
Yes.
Very good.
But as teenagers, their default will be what my default was as a teenager, which is to blame, complain, and make excuses. All of those, it wasn't my fault I got an F. The teacher's an idiot. They didn't teach us what was going to be on it. It wasn't my fault my girlfriend broke up. She's crazy. She didn't, the drinking thing, like they'd find a way to make an excuse on why that happened, even though they were the ones that actually sipped
You're right,
the alcohol.
by the way. And I don't think it's teenagers. I think it's humans.
Yes. So
Yeah.
I would not, we don't allow blaming, complaining, or making excuses. I would say, ask yourself, how were you complicit and what role did you play? That's the very first step. And then figuring out, all right, well, we're going to use this. We're going to use this pain. We're going to use this disappointment. We're going to use whatever the consequences are as a catalyst to grow and to move forward. Because this is not a death sentence. You just made 3 boneheaded mistakes or 3 things that happened to you that happened to most teenagers. And I understand that it's painful right now. And I'm not going to trivialize it. I'm not going to say like, well, don't worry, it's just your high school girlfriend. You might not even remember her name in 20 years. Even though the 50-year-old Alan knows that, the 15-year-old Alan certainly didn't. So I'm going to make sure that they understand that I have nothing but compassion and understanding for what they're going through, and that it is a big deal to them at the moment. But I'm going to hold them accountable to it, and then I'm going to make sure they understand, well, if you want a different outcome in the future, then how will you behave differently in the future? Like, let's not let this adversity go to waste. Let's not let these experiences go to waste. Let's pull something from them so that the next time you have a test or someone asks you if you want to drink or you're in a new relationship, how can you behave differently? Because if you keep behaving in the same manner, you will keep getting what you're getting. And if you don't want to keep getting what you've been getting, then you better change what you've been doing. So I would do all of that, but I would also do it in a compassionate way. I would do it without judgment. I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna, well, you didn't study for your test. Of course you got an F. What are you, an idiot? What do you think? No, I would just say, hey, there have been times too where I haven't studied for tests, and guess what? I got burnt just like you did. So you know what I learned to do? I learned to improve my study habits, so next time that doesn't happen.
Very good.
And I know what it feels like to have someone break up with you and your heart's aching right now. It's not a great feeling, but you will get past this, and let's be here together. Because as their father, the most important thing I want them to know, obviously, is that I love them, but I believe in them, and I've got their back, and I know that like this will be okay, but I'm going to walk through the mud with them, and I'm going to walk through the mud with my arm around them. I'm not going to put them on an island. I'm not going to judge them. I'm not going to make assumptions. But that would kind of be the collective cocktail of what I would do with them.
What about intention in terms of making that next play and reconnecting with your intent, reconnecting with what your dreams and goals are as well in terms of making the next play? I know it's a wide road to get you there,
No,
but I
I
wanted
love
to
that.
ask you that.
No, well, I mean, first and foremost, as we say, the conversations we have with ourselves are the most important conversations we'll ever have. So we have to make sure that that's how we're talking to ourselves, and that we remind ourselves of our intent, that we have big hearts and we're here to be of service. But then we also need, as we said, with environment, we need to insulate ourselves with people that also remind us of that.
Very good.
That can
Very good.
see that in us and want to champion that, but also care enough about us to help us see our blind spots and to see if we start to go a little bit off course. And then we also need to be that light for others. I'm a huge believer that a compliment unshared is an act of selfishness. If I have something nice to say and I choose not to say it, that's being selfish. So what Wayne Dyer did, he didn't have to say any of that to you.
Right. Didn't have to talk to me.
He didn't have to even acknowledge you were on the beach.
Right.
But he did. And he did because he wants to be that light shining with somebody else. And I know I said this quote at the end of our last interview a few years ago, and it's what I got more DMs about than anyone. And that is, a candle loses nothing by lighting another candle. And that's really what we're in the business of. We're in the business, and it doesn't matter if you're in the podcast business, the speaking business, the parenting business, whatever business you're in, it's our job to light other people's candles. But we can only do that if we light ours first. And then just remember that if my light is bright, then I can share that with as many people as possible. So we have to remind ourselves of those things and not let ourselves off the hook. I'm just like you. I believe I'm a good man with a good heart, but boy, have I said and done some really boneheaded things in my life. But those are outcomes, and those are not a reflection of who I am. They're a reflection of maybe making a poor decision in the moment. And just like with the example of talking about my children, I've had to unpack that stuff. I've had to own it, understand my role in it, in many cases apologize for it and make amends, but then I move to the next play and I let that go. What I'm most proud of in my life, there's two things. One, of all of the boneheaded decisions I've made in my life, and I've made so many of them. I've made them out of impatience, I've made them out of fear, I've made them out of ego, I've made them out of insecurity. I've forgiven my previous self for all of those things because it doesn't do me any good to hold on to them. So I've dropped that anchor and I've moved to the next play. The other thing is, and I have the optimism, and some people think that the healthy delusion to believe that my next play is always going to be my best play. Ask me the best speaking engagement I've ever done, it's the next one I've got. That, and I really believe that. I believe the best relationships of my life are still in front of me. My best earning opportunities and business opportunities are still in front of me. My best friendships are still in front of me. And that doesn't mean that I'm degrading or trivializing the ones that are in my life now. They're incredibly valuable. But I have the optimism to believe that my best are still in front of me. I also have the optimism to believe at 50 years old, I'm still going to live another 50 years on this planet. So I'm at halftime right now. And you know, being a sports guy, great sports teams and coaches and players always play a better second half than the first half because they make the adjustments that they need. So I'm going to take all of the lessons I've learned in the first half of life, all of those boneheaded decisions that I've made, and I'm going to apply them to the second half. And the phrase I use with myself is my next 50 will be my best 50. And I can't wait to experience life as a father, as a friend, as a business owner, as a speaker, applying all of these lessons that I've learned. Like, watch out, world, this next 50 years is going to be off the charts.
And that was one of my favorite things that's been said on the show in 10 years, what you just said there at the end.
Well, think about this. Those mistakes that both you and I have made, the man I am today is not in spite of those mistakes. It's because of those mistakes.
So
that's who I am. That's part of the collage.
So true, bro.
A lot of people ask me, I've got some ink, I've got full sleeves, and I've been collecting tattoos, if you will, for 30 years. And the ones that start at the top of my shoulders, I got when I was 20 years old. It's respectfully to the artist that did them. It's not the best artwork I've ever seen. But you know what? My arms are kind of a collage of everywhere I've been and who I've been at that point in time. And I'm actually proud of my artwork. If I started with blank skin right now and I were to go get 2 brand new sleeves, I would not get the same stuff that I have now. But I'm also not the same man I was when I got these when I originally had them. So I'm okay with that. So they're kind of a living symbolism of who I am at different stages of my life. And that's how I look at all of this stuff. I'm not bashful about talking about the mistakes that I've made in the past. Were they painful at the time? Extraordinarily. But I've used that to then propel forward. And I also know too, in the next 50 years, even though it's going to be a great life, I got a lot more mistakes left in me. Here's the promise I try to make to myself. Just stop making the same ones. I'm going to make a fresh batch. I've got 50 years of a whole bunch of mistakes and boneheaded decisions coming up, but I'm not going to keep making the same ones over and over. And to me, that's the most important part. So let's go out and make some mistakes, but let's make some new ones and some fresh ones.
Bro, so good. One thing was not a mistake is having you back on the show.
Thank you.
Really, really great stuff today, Alan. You guys, his next book is right now, Next Play. You can go get that. This has been Alan Stein, and it's been a great podcast.
Thank you, brother.
Share this episode with people that you love and care about. God bless you.